Another very lovely evening to all of you, my dear friends. Once again, I'm ever so thankful that you all could join me. We left off in our Bible study, Daniel 7, with the overall vision of the kingdoms. Now we're going to study Daniel zeroing in. He's zooming in on Persia and Greece in this, and he's telling about another Antichrist that has already come, that is the prefigure of this Antichrist in the future. But this man, as we have went over in previous videos, is Antiochus Epiphanes. In the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared unto me, even unto me Daniel, after that which appeared unto me at the first. Daniel's former vision, Benson said, of the 4 great beasts, took place in the 1st year of Belshazzar. Now in the 3rd year of that king's reign, he had another vision, which chiefly respected 2 of those empires, namely Persia and Greece. Thus, God showed the same things to Daniel at different times and under different symbols, that he might more distinctly understand them in all their circumstances. And I saw in a vision, and it came to pass when I saw that I was at Shushan in the palace, which is in the province of Elam, and I saw in a vision, and I was by the river of Ulai. Then I lifted up mine eyes, and saw, and behold, there stood before the river a ram which had 2 horns, and the 2 horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and the higher came up last. Charles Ellicott commented, the 2 horns, like the 2 breasts and arms of Nebuchadnezzar's image of Daniel 2, or the 2 sides of the bear of Daniel 7, symbolize the twofold character of this empire. The higher horn denotes the Persians, the dominant race, the other horn, the Medians. I saw the ram pushing westward and northward and southward, so that no beast might stand before him, neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand, but he did according to his will, and became great. Once again, Ellicott commented, the ram pushes in 3 different directions. This corresponds to the 3 ribs in the mouth of the bear in Daniel 7. The animal does not push towards the east, as it is presumed that he has already made conquest in those quarters. And as I was considering, behold, a he-goat came from the west on the face of the whole earth, and touched not the ground, and the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. Now this is the kingdom of Greece, the Macedonians, and the horn represents Alexander the Great. Jameson Fawcett Brown noted, the notable horn was Alexander the Great. Touch not the ground implies the incredible swiftness of his conquest. He overran the world in less than 12 years. The he-goat answers to the leopard in Daniel 7. It's the very same. And he came to the ram that had 2 horns, which I had seen standing before the river, and ran unto him in the fury of his power. And I saw him come close unto the ram, and he was moved with choler against him, and smote the ram, and brake his 2 horns. And there was no power in the ram to stand before him, but he cast him down to the ground, and stamped upon him, and there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand. Therefore the he-goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken. Alexander died once that his conquest had been fulfilled. And for it came up 4 notable ones, other horns, toward the 4 winds of heaven. Now these would be Alexander's kingdom being divided notably into 4 different parts. And out of one of them came forth a little horn, which waxed exceeding great, toward the south and toward the east and toward the pleasant land. Just like the little horn mentioned in Daniel 7, only they are not the same. But he said that he goes towards the south, this Antiochus Epiphanes, this little horn. He goes toward the south. Benson said Antiochus extended his dominion toward the south. When taking advantage of the youth of Ptolemy, he made himself master of Egypt, called the south in several places of chapter 11 of this prophecy, and toward the east, where he conquered Armenia and penetrated into Persia. And the pleasant land is, of course, Israel. And it waxed great, even to the host of heaven, and it cast down some of the host and of the stars to the ground, and stamped upon them. Albert Barnes said, he not only carried his conquest to Egypt and to the east and to the Holy Land in general, but that he made war on the holy army of God, the priests and worshippers of Jehovah, here spoken of as the host of heaven. Verse 11 continues, yea, he magnified himself even to the prince of the host, and by him the daily sacrifice was taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. What he's meaning is against God. He's going to war against God by attacking not only his people, but also their homage to God. Against God, Barnes said, as the ruler and leader of his people, Antiochus exalted himself, particularly by attempting to change his laws and to cause his worship to cease. And a host was given him against the daily sacrifice by reason of transgression, and it cast down the truth to the ground, and it practiced and prospered. Ellicott said, the host is apparently the same as that which is mentioned in Daniel 8:10, and means some of the Jewish people. It is known that some of them lapsed under the persecutions of Antiochus, and joined in his idolatrous rites. Some of the Jews actually joined in with him. These apostates were given into his hand, and on account of their apostasy the daily sacrifice also was taken away. Then I heard one saint speaking, and another saint said unto that certain saint which spake, how long shall be the vision concerning the daily sacrifice and the transgression of desolation, to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden under foot? And he said unto me, unto 2,300 days, 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. This is a very controversial verse. Many post-trib, pre-wrath believers point to this verse and they say, see, at the mid-trib point of the last 7 years, which are to come and which we may even be in right now, the last 7 years until Christ's return, at the midpoint, whenever the abomination of desolation takes place, look, there's over 6 years to come. So therefore, we go through the tribulation and then there's 3 years of God's wrath. Well, that is not correct. All people in whom believe post-trib, pre-wrath, and they point to this verse, they need to learn a little bit about the history of Antiochus Epiphanes, because in the immediate context, that is exactly whom this chapter is concerning. It is to show us what this future Antichrist will be like and his deeds. He's picture-perfect image of this coming Antichrist. Here's a little bit of history for all of you to know about Antiochus in that time. In 164 BC, the sanctuary was cleansed. Okay, the abomination of desolation happened in 167 BC. 3.5 years later, then it was cleansed. Albert Barnes goes back 2,300 days from the time of 164 BC to 171 BC. In 171 BC began the series of events which finally resulted in the invasion and destruction of the city, and in the cessation of the public worship of God. Menelaus, having procured the high priesthood, procured the vessels out of the temple and sold them at Tyre. This began in 171. They began to take things from the temple and to defile it. The Jews in Jerusalem, highly indignant at the profanation by Menelaus and the sacrilege in robbing the temple, rose in rebellion against Lysimachus and the Syrian forces who defended him, and both cut off this sacrilegious robber and the guards by whom he was surrounded. In attacking this Menelaus for taking from the temple, in attacking him, they also attacked Antiochus Epiphanes' own soldiers. This assault on the officer of Antiochus and rebellion against him was the commencement of the hostilities which resulted in the ruin of the city and the closing of the worship of God. Here commenced a series of aggressions upon the priesthood and the temple and the city of the Jews, which, with occasional interruption, continued to the death of Antiochus in 164 BC, and which led to all that was done in profaning the temple and in suspending the public worship of God. And it is doubtless to this time that the prophet here refers, that it was a series of events within the 7-year period, because 2,300 days is not, it fits right in with the 7 years, but it was a series of events that led up to this final abomination of desolation, which Antiochus, he sacrificed a pig on the altar in the temple to Zeus. That was the ultimate abomination. But if you go to Daniel 9:27, which we will in our next study, Lord willing, in Daniel 9:27 it talks about the abominations, plural, that maketh desolate. So I fully believe that this 2300 days was a series of horrid things that led up to the temple having to be cleansed 2300 days later. And it came to pass, when I, even I, Daniel, had seen the vision, and sought for the meaning, then behold, there stood before me as the appearance of a man. And I heard a man's voice between the banks of Ulai, which called and said, Gabriel, make this man to understand the vision. So he came near where I stood, and when he came I was afraid, and fell upon my face. But he said unto me, Understand, O Son of Man, for at the time of the end shall be the vision. Charles Ellicott commented on this. Time of the end shall be the vision. Either at the final period of earthly history or at the time which lies at the limit of the prophetic horizon. St. Jerome observes that what happened in the times of Antiochus was typical of what shall be fulfilled hereafter in Antichrist. Once again, this is, in the immediate context, it's speaking of Antiochus Epiphanes, but in the broader view, we have here a foreshadowing of the coming Antichrist. Now as he was speaking with me, I was in a deep sleep on my face toward the ground, but he touched me and set me upright. And he said, Behold, I will make thee know what shall be in the last end of the indignation, for at the time appointed the end shall be. The ram which thou sawest, having 2 horns, are the kings of Media and Persia. And the rough goat is the king of Greece, and the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king, Alexander. Now that being broken, whereas 4 stood up for it, 4 kingdoms shall stand up out of the nation, but not in his power. And in the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors are come to the full, a king of fierce countenance and understanding dark sentences shall stand up. Now I can't emphasize this enough, because this is the summation of the thing that we're coming to. But once again, it's talking about the latter time of Greece before Rome would finally become much stronger than it, and it would be taken up into Rome. But in the broader aspect, I would like to begin looking at it now. And his power shall be mighty, but not by his own power, and he shall destroy wonderfully, and shall prosper and practice, and shall destroy the mighty and the holy people. In order to understand how this coming Antichrist will rise to such great heights and power, you must understand what Antiochus did and how he rose to power. Joseph Benson said, well, he quotes Mr. Wintle, Antiochus was certainly much favored in his designs by a factious party of the Jews themselves, by the treachery of the Jewish people, according to Josephus. Eumenaeus, king of Pergamus, and his brother Attalus, being jealous of the Romans, desired to make Antiochus their friend and supported him in his kingdom. So it was through his friendship with others that he began to rise. And through his policy also, he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand, and he shall magnify himself in his heart, and by peace shall destroy many. He shall also stand up against the prince of princes, but he shall be broken without hand. He shall exalt himself against the true God, Benson said, the Lord of heaven and earth, abolishing his worship and setting up idolatry in its stead. But he shall be broken without hand. By an immediate judgment of God, God struck Antiochus with a noisome disease, attended with horrible torments both of body and mind. It is observable that Polybius and Josephus both confirmed the account which the authors of the books of Maccabees give of his death, speaking of Antiochus, in a state of madness from the apparitions and reproaches of specters and evil spirits. And I believe much the same will torment this coming Antichrist. He'll experience a sense of losing his own mind. Verse 26, And the vision of the evening and the morning, which was told, is true, wherefore shut thou up the vision, for it shall be for many days. Many equate this evening and morning, which it is speaking of the 2300 days here, but they say, well, look, the 2300 days, you split them up into evening and morning, then you have 1150 days, and that fits into the 3.5 years. You can't do that. If you reference Genesis 1 for evening and morning, you have a literal 1 day. So you have to take the 2300 days as literal 2300 days. But also what caught my attention was, Wherefore shut thou up the vision, for it shall be for many days. So Daniel's told, shut up the vision. Jameson Fawcett Brown commented, implying the vision was not to be understood for the present. In Revelation, what would come hundreds of years later, but in Revelation, it is said, seal not the vision, for the time is at hand. So after Christ is crucified, whenever he's buried and then resurrected, then the vision of Christ is told unto all through the book of Revelation. But as Daniel was also referencing Antiochus Epiphanes, this would be 300 years after him, so quite some time later. Now there's a very good lesson to learn here at the closing. The very last verse in this chapter is, and I, Daniel, fainted and was sick certain days. Afterward I rose up and did the king's business, and I was astonished at the vision, but none understood it. The very last 4 words we should all pay attention to. None understood it, he said. It would seem probable, Albert Barnes said, from this, that none understood it, that he communicated it to others. Some, maybe just a handful of other interpreters around him. But no one was able to explain it. Its general features were plain, but no one could follow out the details and tell precisely what would occur before the vision was fulfilled. This is the general nature of prophecy, and if neither Daniel nor any of his friends could explain this vision in detail, are we to hope that we shall be successful in disclosing the full meaning of those which are not yet fulfilled now? In the book of Revelation, and 2 Thessalonians 2, the rapture, and these things are so hotly debated because they're not understood today. Only in hindsight can one truly see how it all unfolded. Right now we see through a glass darkly at these things. I fully believe that. But we shouldn't argue. If we can keep from it, we should try to just say, well, agree to disagree, because even in Daniel's day, they didn't understand what these things meant. We don't understand fully what these prophecies that we now know of mean either. So let's all try to be at peace with one another's opinions on them, okay? I think that's a good lesson to end on. Until next time, my friends, Lord willing, God of peace, love, and mercy be with you all. Amen.